be surrounded by water art and sharing water writing. And we want to give some special thanks to Sylvia Ferguson and Karin Clarke for this opportunity to read in this water conversation with all this visual art.
And before we get started, we wanted to share a little bit about water questions. Our project was basically to immerse ourselves in 12 bodies of water over the course of a year. And so we visited each body of water and we stayed it for as long as we could stand it. And we also gathered information about the ecology and the human history of each place. And we wrote about our experiences, took photographs, and added drawings and reflections.
Collaboration has been a really interesting and exciting part of this project because we've had to balance our kind of different approaches and our different sensibilities and different vulnerabilities too. And throughout kind of negotiating who gets to say what and how we're going to say it, and we kind of have to decide together, especially in some of the pieces where we start writing together, when is a passage a we, and when is a passage an individual I, and how do we grade it all together.
So one of the things that we quickly realized was that our story had two protagonists, not one. And we've had to really push against some of the simple comparison, simple dichotomies, I'm this, ignore that, because sometimes we overlap and sometimes we have different stances, but they aren't necessarily opposing. And we both had to push against the fear that one of us will seem lesser to readers in comparison to the other. And I think we both agree we've had to let go of a lot of ego in order to create together.
One thing about our relationship is that when we first began this project, we didn't actually know a lot about each other. We grew up in the same town, and we went to the same high school, but we lived at opposite ends of that town, so we didn't really hang out together, and we didn't really become friends until a couple of years ago, although we do have this longer history that goes into the past. But as we spent time with bodies of water and with each other, we've really grown our friendship.
Yeah. And swimming and skinny dipping in particular makes us vulnerable and more alert to our surroundings. The water is often very cold and we can't stay in for very long. But even a quick dip, we find really leaves us tingling and awake, and it feels as if we've made a small pact with the place, and by extension other places like it. It's kind of a reminder that we're all in this together, meaning life here on Earth, and our swimming adventures in wild places continue to remind us that we are part of every landscape we enter.
So we're going to be reading accounts from 6 of our swims, and these are not the fullness of any of the chapters, but parts of each of 6 of our swims. And the first 2 are poems addressed to each other. The second 2 are also poems, but they take a little more the form of letters. And the last 2 are collaborative pieces that we wrote and revised together. So, without further ado, we will take the plunge into our first swim, which was the coast fork of the Willamette River. Nice and close and familiar. And we call this chapter Wading In. Suspended in water, loose, cold, a bright darkness of cold. The touch of water as if another skin. The body creates in the water a negative space, a shape the water surrounds. I imagine the body vanished, and the water still held around every detail, perfect. Every wrinkle, every crease, every curve and fold, the shape of fingernails, the shape of toes. The water is moving and we are moving, 2 of us today, the first swim into the 3rd tongue of the river's edge where it comes up high on the hard dirt bank. January, the damp ground, the cold little stones, the tired remains of grasses and leaves, the light low in the sky upon us. Our naked bodies, the clouds, complicated and tumbled with light, and the trees on the far bank dark and skinny, bare like bristles, like an old brush with a broken handle, darkness and light streaming through. What do you know of me? A little. At least enough to venture here like this. Naked, we go into the water, stripped down quick. We and the world in private conversation of being, but not looking exactly at each other. A little space, a little privacy in cold, how it slips up over the ankles, the shins, the thighs, how it slides between the legs and up and over the belly, how the body gasps and falls forward, letting go, no longer touching the earth. We are separately suspended, the cold waits, curious. I feel my two minds. Stay longer, says one. Get out now. Two minds bobbing in me. What about you? Where are your minds now? You move to shore, I move to shore. My feet are aching with cold, but the dark water, the mystery of it. How long would I last if I stayed? On land again, skin tingles, awake, alive. The air is friendly. Hello, hello, hello. It pats at our limbs, our faces. It is easy now to be nothing, to stand naked in the air. It is easy just to be this body standing here in the late light of now. I think you think so too. Look at you laugh. What is beautiful? What is naked? What is vulnerable? What is alive? Why is it hard to be a human body in a human world? Why is it hard to stay this awake? Flickering in the space of embodied, dissolved. Let the body unsymbol itself, be like the hawk that floats overhead, searching the earth for motion, nourishment, transformation. Let us search for how to be life and not an idea of life.
I am often guilty of thinking that animals and plants, osprey, minnows, shield fern, horsetail, have feelings like our own, exist to offer up a feast of metaphor. Perhaps our swims will teach me a new way of being in nature. I am only beginning to know you and the way your body holds you. Are these things one and the same? We approach the water together for our first swim. We begin to disrobe, have not yet decided whether to bathe in our underwear or take it all off. I realize we will see each other's bodies in the unforgiving white light of winter. The bare-boned trees cast no shadows, no dappled shade for camouflage. We too will be laid bare. I read once in an art history book of the difference between naked and nude. To be naked was to be exposed and defenseless. To be nude was to be artfully composed. I used to feel nude whenever I stripped off my clothes, armed with youth and skin silvery and supple as a fish. But these days, I only feel naked. Standing at the tip of the river with you just a few yards away, our eyes catch. Without a word, we strip down to nothing. Sharp intakes of breath. It is colder than I imagined, and without looking too closely, we rush headlong into the river. The rocks are sharp, and the water like a fist to the chest. My skin is on fire. Strange how extreme cold burns much like extreme heat. I stumble, splash, cry out. I am vaguely aware you are beside me, communing with water in your own way. I completely forget we are naked. I quickly stagger back to shore, saved from dissolution. The air feels golden and warm. The illusion of heat combines with pride at having given myself up to the river, if just for a moment, in early January. I laugh out loud, lie down on the earth spread eagled. How delightful it would be to bask in this balmy white air forever. But the heat is a phantasm. We quickly return to the carapace of sweaters, jeans, and hats. We drive home, tongues loosened by cold water, air on skin. We speak of bodies becoming invisible as time passes, of sadness mixed with relief, the absence of expectation, that we be light and lovely. We speak of gratitude for bodies that carry us into oceans and lakes, bodies that float like seagrass. And I wonder, should we give up on beauty altogether, or insist on it, albeit in different form, a form we haven't yet invented?
So, as you can tell, we started our project in January, and it was very cold. And February was also very cold. And March actually also was very cold. But in March, we made the brilliant decision to go to a hot spring. So that was kind of nice, and it was a pretty different experience than getting into the super cold water. It was also our first time, after our first 2 swims, we were basically alone. But the hot springs, we suddenly were sharing water space with other people. And in some ways this was a little unsettling and kind of got in the way of our desire to connect with the place because we were distracted by the people. But in other ways, interestingly, I felt like it helped us become more of a unit. So the first 2 swims, we're sort of figuring out, who are you? Who am I? Who are you? Who am I? And then when we're there with these other people, it's like, oh, we're a little water team. And that was kind of nice. So, McCready Hot Springs, settling in. A clear day after bouts of snow and rain and sleet and hail. The woods crystalline and moss, bodies of trees adorned in green, standing in white, everything sparkling, hushed, like a portal to another realm. Slippery, a hint of peril, roots and mud and ice, skittering and sliding, the corridor of winter, a test a traveler must traverse in order to enter. What? The pool, wide-ish, shallowish, not exactly beautiful, muddy, gritty, silty gray, the pale, naked bodies of 2 men already drifting in it. 6 not naked 20-somethings in a pool farther down. Was this it? Just this? Heat came up from the earth. Steam rose into the cold. The air was full of quiet wraiths. And when the sun shone through the steamy plumes, you were wreathed in it. We joined the naked men. The quiet one rested his head on his hands on a rock as he dozed, a solitary animal sleeping naked in a pool in the woods. The other flapped around, a man wanting to transform himself and his life, but not knowing how, or what kind of being he should become. When the young people finished their soaking, they fretted as they changed their clothes, hiding their bodies in elaborate awkwardness, and this in front of a pool of naked people. Perhaps they didn't notice us. Perhaps they pretended we weren't there. Perhaps our bodies simply didn't matter, their own in this moment, so potent, risky, uncertain. We lay quiet, murky with silt and sediment, pulling away from bursts of hot, shooting up from the muddy floor like little biting teeth. The mud and silt did not feel unclean, just part of the pool, mineral, soft clouds pillowing up, small grit under my palms. Most of it so delicate, I barely felt it settle on my skin. Solution, dissolution, solve, dissolve, us in the soup of it. For a long time, happy in the lappy heat, we basked in bubbles and silt, and then walked back through the snowy passage when we were done.
When it comes to nature, I'm greedy. Sword ferns bursting through snow hillocks, pale moss amidst banks of blinding white, vapor rising from pools, a hazy nimbus of sunlight shrouding our heads, you, glasses glittering, diamond-eyed. I didn't want to share it with strangers. When we first arrived at the hot springs and realized we were not alone, my heart snapped shut, not so hard as stone, but no longer open as water. Nor were the springs as beautiful as I wanted them to be. Pond scum and the leavings of others, plastic bags, tumbled undergarments littered the shore. The awkward sounds of sexual courtship, towel snapping, young women shrieking in mock horror, young men vying for their attention, carried across the water. Someone was drinking Coke from a can. I confess I hated it. And I felt ashamed of hating it. Why does imperfect beauty enrage me? Why must I be so difficult? But as we eased into the ooze of mud and steam, I felt something akin to church. I didn't need the 2 men for my experience to be complete, but recognized they were seeking the same thing we were. I settled into these springs in a way I could not for our earlier swims. When the water was cold, I focused on not dying, on warming the husk of my body, remembering to breathe. The water, warm now, I no longer scrabbled to master unforgiving landscape. I shut my eyes and we were ancient animals wallowing, rippled water the color of clay, our animal lungs sighing like bellows, a gentle shifting of trunks and paws and haunches. Yes, I noticed the man who seemed to meet us, his fleshy paunch, his palpable wish to be a part of what you and I were sharing. What was it we were sharing? Words about words, the point at which truth spills over into untruth, whose stories belong to whom. Did you worry the water was dangerous? It was hot enough to startle us as it bubbled up from the mud, to sting our bottoms sharp and swift as the bite of a horsefly, yet not enough to harm us. More dangerous perhaps to be out in the world, naked and aging, adrift without clothes, in full view of strangers, our breasts and bellies mushroom soft, marked by time. Let them ignore us, let them judge and find us wanting. Our bodies were covered in layers of silt. When cloud shadows moved across the water's surface, our skin seemed part of earth and sky. We briefly belonged to the world of plants, animals, sulfur, steam. Its amorality and innocence were ours. And then it's me, isn't it? So the next swim, this one was all about uncomplicated joy, and about how our joy somehow sort of unleashed a river of talk about pain and loss and self-doubt. We wanted to try and capture the surprising ways in which these things can sometimes intermingle, and how being physically naked can lead to other forms of nakedness. So our sixth swim, Waldo Lake, a leak. And these are, again, sort of in letter form with some poetry sort of infused throughout. Our second effort to reach Waldo Lake, we drove and drove. There were little gray slugs of snow heaped on the hillsides, but this time the road was clean all the way through. Chirring of damselflies, clouds whirled as fingerprints, water so clear we could count each pebble, you and I the only humans for miles. What had I expected? Nothing so spacious, nothing so inviolate. I thought maybe there would be hordes of muscled trucks, motorboat engines ripping at the silence, men fishing off the pier, gaping at us, leering even. I was glad to be wrong, and I was glad to be alone, just us. Strange how expectation shapes experience. If I expected something this splendid, would I have found it to be so? The lake licked at the shore, alive, curious. Did it care for us? Two women standing together, alert, naked as water? Or perhaps the lake is indifferent to our comings and goings. I cannot help but give it a tongue and mind. You seem less tempted to treat water as sentient, organismal. I watched you hover at the rim of the lake, no shy glances as with earlier swims. Yes, I was the first to strip bare, but you did not hesitate to follow. I am coming to know your body, not as a mother knows the body of her child, or the lover the body of her beloved, but as two friends at ease in aging skins. I have seen your ridges and furrows, the gentle, deliberate way you enter water, hands fluttering at your sides, small white birds. I was all impulse and plunge, limbs flapping, naming the beauty again and again, loud and shrill as an osprey crying, "Isn't it perfect? Isn't it everything we want from water?" Yes, yes, you nodded, stepping into the lake, smile wide as sky, laughter green gold, at one with your nakedness, body incandescent. We prattled like children. We jumped from the end of the dock, again, again, again. We watched our shadows far below us on the bottom of the lake, small, dark amphibian bodies groping their way over rocks. I saw a pair of dragonflies mating in flight and was struck by their ridiculous, twice-blessed ecstasy. Oh, to fly and make love at the same time. But swimming naked with you in water, here and now, skimming over stones and reflections, was almost as good. As we swam, we remembered other bodies of water we'd known, skinny dipping with my daughters in kettle ponds at night. The oceanic undertow that once brought you to your knees. The boy who jumped from the top of Silver Falls, spinning like a Samara as he fell to his death. I couldn't help thinking he was someone's child. Our drive home took more than an hour. We spoke as mothers of children no longer sheltered in our homes. I told you there were years when I didn't know how to mother my daughters, didn't know how to keep them whole and alive, how unprepared I felt for their fierce, complicated recklessness, the younger flirting with oblivion, the elder carving grief into skin at once both butcher and carcass. My prayer that it be enough, as it once was, to skinny dip in lakes with nothing but darkness and water to hold them. You listened intent to what I said, allowed me to be naked in all the ways, and as you drove toward Eugene, the sky stayed bright and blue overhead, like a lake above us, and we finding our way among stones.
I hadn't bothered to map our route. Didn't know exactly where we would turn. Felt flummoxed by a gated campground road. How far was the lake? Why do I keep thinking that finding my way will be simple, intuitive? Uncertainty is the opposite of expectation, but doubt also amplified delight when we found our way. The lake. No one here but ourselves. The sun spread over everything, the water shining with gleaming light. Empty dock, sun-warm, a picnic table unused for months, spattered with springtime sap. Under a bush, a solitary toad. Hello, toad. Sorry to startle you. We are here, alone and not alone. I like to think of trees or rocks or bodies of water as brothers or sisters, but ones who do not experience or think or exist the way I do. I might touch them or talk to them, but I don't expect them to notice or respond. Water receives me. Water welcomes, not me exactly, but my physical being. Water moves easily to let me enter. Water fills in where I have gone. Does it care for me? No. It yields to my body because that is what water does. It holds me, and it could, without malevolence, drown me. We exist together, water and I. I remember we both entered slowly at first, not from the dock, but from the edge of the lake, walking into water so clear it was like cool glass. Colder the deeper we got. We glittered, a procession of two. We plunged and swam, delighted, alive, frolicking like otters. We are not powerful swimmers, you or me. We laughed at this as we paddled about. And when we got out, we had to go in again and again, sparkling, stilly. I caught an image of you when you jumped off the end of the dock, naked, suspended in air, all those trees and sky behind you, and the lake below. Glee. The water felt like swimming through light. We had a lovely time at Waldo. We were cleansed in some way, and happy. It was, I think, our happy to swim so far. I wonder if it was all that happy light that let us speak of dark times on the drive home. Or maybe we've just spent enough time together that we felt safe. Either way, I'm glad we did.
What if I'm not a good mother?
What is good enough?
What if I cannot keep my children safe?
What if I cannot provide a safe haven anymore?
What if there is no home?
What if cold and dark?
What if children try to destroy themselves?
What if going up in smoke?
What if children are far away?
What if our lives no longer interleave, overlap, intertwine?
When children do not tell us their pain?
When they choose their own words for themselves?
When can we feel safe enough to imagine the future?
When children know who they are?
When we admire them as human beings?
When we see them walking into their other world?
When we could bask in their presence forever?
What if I was not a good mother?
What is good enough?
What if I falter going forward?
What if the mind falters, fails?
What if I become the burden? So, swimming together brings you together. The next swim was an adventure. And actually we have a version of it written in the form of a heroic journey. But right now we're going to share with you two accounts that follow our overlapping experiences of the day. This was our swim in Lost Lake, in quest of the disappearing lake. It was our longest drive yet. We talked and talked as the trucks and cars and trailers sped by, and the river glinted between the teeth of empty, burnt-out trees. Too far, I finally said, turning into a pull-off. I spread the atlas on the hood of the car, and we saw the tiny numbered road we'd missed. The road, a roller coaster of potholes. We stopped at the first picnic table we saw. You were ready to skinny dip as soon as we got out of the car. I wanted to find the hole into which the lake disappears each year. A dirt path led down to the meadow. Burnt slopes rose on the far side of the highway, but the meadow greens, they were glorious. Reeds, thick, dark, and glossy, with lighter greens, more delicate among the grasses and shrubs, and other places bright with hints of yellow-green and olive over patches of still damp ground. I was so hopeful we were close. The ground blinked with tiny toads like bits of earth come to life. Surely water was near. Blue damselflies, golden damselflies, shimmers lifting away, settling farther off as we drifted through the lake that was and wasn't there. But where was the mysterious doorway into the underground? We couldn't find it. Maybe this was as lake as we were going to get. We leapt in, naked among the dry reeds. We crouched, dove, and surfaced, leaving flattened nests behind us, like the beds of animals. I thought of a place I once found in a meadow, tamped down by a herd of resting elk. I could still smell them on the grasses. I lay down where they had been and felt like a wild thing, peaceful, until I thought, what if a bear comes by and finds me smelling like a tiny elk? The sun blazed. We took pictures of arms and legs waving from the sea of grasses, but swimming in the hot brightness of scratchy, dry reeds was not the pleasure for me that water is, and I was happy to pull the softness of my clothes back on. When a couple of cars went by, I was glad we'd finished our reedy frolic, but perhaps there was something further down the lumpy road, so we drove on. Sure enough, a glint of wet, shallow and silty. Two men appeared to be fishing, and almost no water. They made me uneasy. Skirting them, we followed a stream rivering off the meadow, and then we saw it. One watery hole with a skin of seed and lucifer, and another just under the surface of the flowing current, where it swirled like a magic spell. Circular rafts of tangled, matted grasses spinning clockwise, oh, to immerse in this. But we only put our feet in, not wanting to break anything or disturb the cyclings of mats on which rode multitudes of more tiny toads. Like rotating dance floors, you said. I liked thinking of toads dancing over the hole where water went percolating down, traveling for years until today's lost lake reached somewhere into the future of Clear Lake, miles away. One of the strange men in his ritual of non-fishing peered in our direction and disappeared again. We walked back through the damp and drying lake bed full of sprouting mullein and thick stands of thistle about to burst into honey sweet and purple solids. You took pictures of Matt's yellow flowers. I took a photograph of a feather caught in grass. And then we agreed to stop at Clear Lake on the way back. Clear Lake with its underwater petrifying forests and lava, its boaters and picnickers. We picked our way down the shady hillside and went right in. First clothed, and then we had to take the wet stuff off anyway. We went back in, bare. Our feet and waving limbs stirred up blobs of algae, but we swam past them to where the water was very deep and green and lit with long shafts of light. And then we drove home, talking again. Wasn't it a perfect day?
Here in the lap of the Cascades between Mount Jefferson and Mount Washington, signs of fire to the north and south of us. At the most fierce, the Booth and Bear Butte fire of 2003 burned more than 10,000 acres per day. It's hard to imagine the wildness of these fires. Air filled with ash, habitats of fox, birds, and fish destroyed, watersheds poisoned. And yet I was struck by the landscape's unexpected loveliness. What was it that moved me? The remnants of past life, the fragile beginnings of new life, the breathtaking power of nature to extinguish and rebuild. We passed what were once delicately feathered trees, all that is left now, a child's crude sketch of forest. We drove right past the unmarked turnoff, talking about geology, about how water from Lost Lake drains into several holes near the shore, filters down through volcanic rock, makes its way slowly into a buried tributary of the Mackenzie River, where it burbles up again at the edge of Clear Lake, 20 miles west. It takes as much as 7 years for the water to travel the distance. I love the idea of the water's leisurely underground voyage. At the crest of the pass, we realized we'd driven too far. We turned back the way we came, and this time we found the lake, a rusty post marked 388 behind a gangly stand of mullen. A pitted dirt road, Lost Lake waterless, apocryphal, nothing but a memory of itself. Empty lake, a soft green belly. We waded into the meadow grasses parting before us like curtains, flushing blue and gold insects, birds the color of pitch, numberless toads no bigger than dimes hopping high as our knees. I was so eager to be naked, I started taking my clothes off before we reached our destination. You laughed, but without water, who was to say where and when we arrived? How did we wade into a lake without water? Where was the shore? Where were the shallows? Where did the bottom of the lake fall away and leave us suddenly, blessedly adrift? I love the topsy-turvy of it all. It felt like a grade school riddle. How do you swim in a meadow? What happens when 2 middle-aged ladies take off their clothes by the side of the road? I didn't mind the heat, the scratchiness of grass and baked mud against skin. I loved the smell of hot earth, its mineral tang, the abundance of animal life, the release of toads, the winging of birds and damselflies with every step was better than any magician's hat trick. I liked skinny dipping in the lake's dry bowl. I felt giddy being out in the open with you, so much space, no dark water where secret life might lurk, everything clear and bell bright. Without clothes, I was a small, happy animal. Both of us cavorting on the lake floor, hiding, revealing, flashes of ankle and wrist, necks bobbing like flower stalks. I wondered if the people speeding by in cars could see us, 2 women in their 50s naked in an empty lake. Or did we register as no more than bursts of light in the middle of a field? We took pictures, lots of them. You noticed how the grasses, unlike water, retained the imprint of our bodies. Your camera, a green eye, seeking out the grassy nest where skin was. We ate lunch at a lopsided picnic bench. A few cars with tinted windows, radios pulsing like hearts, arrived and departed. I realized I felt safer with you beside me. After lunch, we went searching for the drain hole, the place where the lake disappears, the opposite of a spring. The men made me uneasy. What were they doing there, the water less than 3 inches deep? They couldn't possibly be fishing. When I called out to them, I didn't like the older man's unsmiling gaze, the younger man's silence, his thick back that made me feel small, insubstantial as meadow grass. The older man pointed north, and just upstream we found it, a dark hole maybe 10 feet across, lazy brown water, bits of straw floating on the surface. Another hole, unexpected, at the edge of the creek bed, this one bluer, with discs of dry grass whirling like cogs, each one dancing with toads. A part of me wanted to strip down again, jump in. Did you feel it too? But Lost Lake, almost entirely dried up now, ringed on all sides by burnout, felt fragile. I didn't want to cause more harm to an already damaged landscape. There was also the nearness of the strange men. And besides, I felt sated, grateful to have experienced the glory of floating with you in a waterless lake. Clear Lake was the coda to this story, the place where the water from Lost Lake years later emerges clean and pure. We didn't plan to skate it. We'd already exposed ourselves fully to Lost Lake. But as we swam out in our underwear, we thought, why not? And we stripped down once more and basked in the cool blue shade. I'm going to get to this next one now.
Oh,
Want to stand up with me?
yeah.
So these 2 next pieces were written collaboratively, like Kelly mentioned earlier. She and I took turns typing couplets initially, and then we revised our work by sitting side by side. So it's now impossible in many places to tell whose voice was whose originally. Both our fingerprints are really all over everything. And yet, I'm sure you'll still hear places where my voice or Kelly's stands out. So this is our 10th swim, 6 is river, in the mouth of the river. We will swim at the mouth of the river where tides reverse. I admit I fear being swept out to sea.
I want to reassure you, the ripples are wind, not current. I like feeling the ocean nearby. Old giant, muffled roar.
It smells like home here along the ragged shore. Rotting seaweed, pungent decay. We leave tracks in the sand, gather stones. We were children on this coast once, each of us separate.
We skirt the edge of the river, a whole day of drawing closer before going in. Cranberry bogs, bright as blood, old campers sunk in weeds, the neighbor burning trash, small, bright inferno.
Cows down in the pastures by the river, moving around, slow, steady, and the dark and pointed spruces, the old heads of yarrow, gray and twisted as old wrists.
Headland, cliff, cliff, steep with hidden pocket coves, waves batter the rocks.
Violence haunts this place, 20 Potomac slaughtered by white settlers. Did the ocean run red as the bogs?
The river spits out trunks of trees, remnants of gold mining dust, bodies of dead birds carried down from the Klamath Mountains, the grassy knob wilderness to the east. River of coast cutthroat, marbled murrelets, Roosevelt elk. It enters the Pacific at this windswept westernmost point of Oregon.
I wish to see the animals we read about on lists of things gone missing. Herds, flocks, gatherings of creatures thick with life.
Quietly, we approach the water, the wild, dry grasses mounded like the backs of goats.
We wade through them, come upon a narrow finger of water. Ophelia fills my mind, her drowned face ringed with wildflowers, aster, cow parsnip, Scotch broom, the yellow of wet hair. I see myself floating, naked among the reeds, but no longer nubile, an Ophelia with stretch marks and wrinkled neck.
I want more open water, sky. I urge you farther out.
We find our footing, two happy specks of animal joy. See how we shine white among the grasses. See how our bodies echo the gnarled bark of driftwood where we stretch our limbs.
The water folds around, first in the open place and then again among the reeds you wanted. It's deeper here in the secret channel. I'm the animal people passing by do not see.
Isn't it funny putting on our clothes, how suddenly our feet are muddy again when they've just been feet before?
Now I walk out to where men stand fishing from sandy banks. A seal cavorts in the foam of the surf. More appear in the river's mouth, gliding in the smooth curve, moving between worlds. In this meeting place of river, tide, blurring place, for the seal it is all swimming place.
Soft river, moiling ocean, the two swirl and churn where they collide. I imagine my body sucked down, disappearing, death by water. A part of me wishes it.
I want to live. I want to be the seal, diving into the churn and slipping through it, riding the gleamy inside of the curve, becoming an arch of wave, swimming into the calm of the river and out again.
Covered up now are crustacean shells of parkas and boots. The wind is gone. No more ruffled water. The river's mouth, a quiet mirror of sky and snags and men in skiffs. The water gentle as a mother. I was wrong to be afraid. We could have swum anywhere between our cabin and the river's maw.
Beautiful sand, like tiny black beads, the green glass curl of waves rolling in, the pounding on the sloped beach. Here, the gulls mass near the river's mouth. We approach and they lift off, hundreds, leaving the dark sand empty of everything but a beached sea lion we hadn't noticed. It shakes its massive head. We turn away, give it privacy to sleep or dream or grieve or die or find its way back to water. All right, we've come to the last reading, and this is going to bring us back to the Willamette Valley and yet another body of water. And this one subject to human manipulation and control and a lot of human use, although it also remains really rich and beautiful habitat. This last swim was in the dark, and this was Fern Ridge Reservoir Moon. We chose the reservoir because of the moon, September's second moon, an extra radiance tacked on to the idea of month that once meant one moon only. Maybe from the reservoir we'll see it coming up. Maybe we'll swim in moonlight, or maybe it will simply be another cloud moon.
We have been waiting for this, our first swim in the dark. Here in the now of what was once a flat and swampy valley floor, once inhabited by a group of Kalapuya, the Chemawala, now land covered by water, controlled, high in summer for irrigation, low in winter so it may fill when rain is torrential, when rivers overflow. A world now for birds, boaters, water skiers. But what's been drowned?
The sun goes down. Gold, gold, gold. By the time we arrive, it's gone. No moon yet, just a ruddy parking lot, a paved road leading into a gathering dark, a stained sky, orange and red, all the rest in black.
Where will we enter?
Or did we enter the moment we left the car?
A dam as old as our mothers lies 50 miles east of the Cascadia subduction zone, a megathrust fault along the Oregon coast, where one giant plate of the Earth's carapace rubs against another. Potential earthquakes, colossal, could go on for days. The last shook here 300 years ago. The next, who knows?
We pick our way down to the reservoir's edge. Still no moon. We cannot see the line between water and shore. It's concrete, steep, slippery. No, this is not a good place to swim. Let's go back to the beach, even though a point of land obscures the moon's doorway. Maybe we'll swim in the dark and see the moonlight later.
A wave of disappointment. Curse the clouds. Still we have darkness and water and our bodies. It's easy to strip down in the dark, but this is the slimiest water yet. Slimier than the meditation pool where debris from fire coated skin. Slimier than McCready and its puffs of silt. Maybe the dark makes us feel it more. Slippery, almost oily.
Why do we feel the grime of people in this water? Because of its parks, yacht clubs, because it is a reservoir, human-made, the Long Tom River swollen by a dam.
We slide into this greasy water that has washed the skins of thousands, lapped at the hulls of boats, absorbed runoff from farms and oversized new homes. Yet swans winter here. Land is lush with pheasant, quail, goose, and dove. Corps of volunteers plant corn, millet, sunflowers by the thousands to feed migrating birds. We are near each other in the water, companionably close, but we do not touch. Into the water's darkness, we disappear, all except our pale faces. How long do we bob around? It's cold. We feel unclean. Why do we stay?
The moon. It appears, immense and orangey, rising behind the distant hills. Not visible from the beach, but we have swum into its moon view. It floats higher, luminous, like an old guardian, sending gleaming ladders across the reservoir. Or are they ropes, waving, inviting?
Umbilical cord, tender, tremulous thread linking our bodies to the moon. Fat, silky sky womb.
Womb and veins and arteries. How we love to see the world in our image. The world holds us in its body and we hold the world in ours. Messy, wounded, alive. Long Tom will speak your tributaries from source to mouth in all their tainted names. Michael's Creek, Jones, Swamp, and Dusky.
Hayes Creek, Sweet Creek, Green and Gold.
No-Tie, Wilson, Indian Creek, and then, after the reservoir,
Squaw Creek, Coyote Creek, Lingo Slough, Bear.
Amazon, Ferguson, Schaefer Creek, and Müller.
And you all together join the Willamette.
And you all join the Columbia.
And you all join the sea.